Hey everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel. So today we're going to be talking about long arms and bench press. So long arms is something that some people really struggle with bench press. It increases our range of motion and makes us feel like our arms aren't strong enough. But we have some workarounds that you want to consider if you do have long arms. Things that go above just getting bigger, stronger, or working on your technique. So if we take a look at Josh doing some bench press here, as you can see there's a decent amount of range. So his arch isn't super high, his arms feel pretty long, and he's even in his wide grip position. So a lot of these technical positions that we can work on are things like bringing our ribs up to the bar or bringing our grip out wide. But for some people, this isn't enough. So if you have long arms, you can break this up into two parts of your arm. The first of which is going to be your forearm. So this is the distance here between your wrist and your elbow. And the second part is going to be the humerus or the upper arm. And this is the distance between your elbow and your shoulder. So one of the first points we want to consider if you tried those simple sort of tactics and they haven't worked out for you is going to be what our wrists are doing. So when we typically think about our wrists, the more common sort of motions we consider are our wrists bending forwards and backwards like so. So typically when we're bench pressing, we tend to think about keeping our wrists perfectly neutral or letting our wrists bend backwards depending on our technique. But one thing we want to take into account as well, if you do have a very long humerus or a very long upper arm, is making sure that our wrist isn't stuck in a bent in position. So our wrist can deviate inwards and it can deviate outwards. And if we have a very, very long humerus right through here and it extends out, this is going to push our elbows very, very wide when we bench press. And the wider that our elbows are going, the more important it is for our wrist to be able to bend outwards, as this keeps the bar pressure along through our forearm here, stacked over our elbow. Whereas often if our wrist is bent inwards too much, our elbow is no longer under our hands and we struggle producing force through the barbell.
So what Tom's going to demonstrate here is when his wrists roll inwards towards each other. This is going to make it very hard for his wrists and elbows to be stacked on each other, which is going to make it very hard for him to produce a lot of force. But if he thinks about pulling his pinkies away from each other, this is going to allow him to essentially get his wrist and his elbows stacked over another to allow him to use his triceps and his other big pushing muscles or pressing muscles to produce force for the bench press.
One way we can train deviation of the wrist is by using a rope cable tricep extension, where we can really exaggerate the turning out of our wrists at the bottom of the movement, thinking pinkies away from each other at the bottom.
So the second consideration for long arms and bench press is going to be more important if you have a very long forearm like so. So the main thing that's going to be happening is our bar has to go down further and our elbows have to track lower into our body. So this is going to feel like we have more depth on the bench press or physically just more range. So if you have long arms, what this is the equivalent of is Josh doing a close grip here. So when he moves in close grip, effectively his forearm gets his actual length. So when we go wide grip, it's angled slightly, and close grip is where the forearm is directly up, which means his forearm's at full length. This means that as the bar comes down, it has a further distance to travel, and his elbows have to dip lower underneath his chest. So his bench depth is actually more than normal.
One way we can get stronger at the bottom of the bench press is by training our triceps with our arms behind our body, purely because we'll be spending more time in this position with longer arms. So the main focus of this exercise is to keep our elbow up and behind our body as best as we can, trying to avoid letting it drop as we extend our elbow behind our body. So besides good programming and simply just adding more muscle mass, try these two exercises to see if that helps with your bench press if you struggle with longer arms.